In this lesson, we'll take a look at some more advanced sculpting concepts and start to sculpt our little creature. So for this portion, I don't want you necessarily to do exactly the same thing that I do. You can if you want to, but if you want to try something different, you can. I just want to give you an idea of how I would go through and begin to actually sculpt the detail on this little worm creature. Okay, so you could use Dynamesh for this too if you wanted to be able to add and remesh this. I'm going to go ahead and just use the subdivision levels here and do as much as I can. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on, get the move brush, turn on symmetry in the X, kind of a larger brush size. And here at the low level, I'm going to start to tweak this shape. And the eyes I'm going to leave where they are, but I want to come in here and just start to, and really this is kind of as much as I can do at this point because we're working with such a low resolution piece of geometry here, the base. Okay, there's not really too much more I can do in terms of sculpting. I can really just come in and start shaping this, kind of flatten out the bottom where it's going to sit on the ground. Maybe curve this up a little bit more, add a little bit more of a stylization there, bring this back in a little bit, widen the head up a bit. Okay, now once I get to a point where I can't really do too much more with this, I can subdivide it, so Control D, and then continuing to use Move, I can now start to manipulate these polygons. So I can come in here, maybe I want it to be sort of angry, I want to really have a defined kind of mouth coming around, and I'll leave the teeth where they are and kind of work the mouth around the teeth. And so from here I have a lot more geometry that I'm able to work with. I want the mouth, corner of the mouth to come down quite a bit, the lips to be sort of sticking up. Okay, come in here and start to increase that. And again, the move tool is going to be good at this level too because there's not a ton of sculpting to be done here. I'll widen up this bottom where it's sitting on the ground. Maybe bring up so there's more of a chin there. You can get a larger draw size here. You can kind of smooth it out if you want to, kind of bring it forward. And then when you get to a point where you can't really do much else, you can subdivide. So that way you're not just subdividing up as high as you can go just because you might not need all of that resolution. Here I can do the same thing, but at this point I'm starting to get to the point where I can begin doing a little bit more regular sculpting of this to get the look that I want. Okay. So what I can do is go ahead and get the standard brush, and I can begin coming in here and just sculpting out maybe around the mouth, kind of the lips there. I want them to have these sort of brows coming down, so I can start to kind of define those in the area around the eye. Maybe the back, add a little bit more detail coming in the back. Okay, and start to define maybe this sort of head and nose area. Give it a little bit more detail up here. And then we'll subdivide again and continue to do the same thing here. Now at some point I usually like to come in and let me go ahead and kind of push this mouth in a little bit. If you need to hit solo to be able to see something a little bit more, you can do that. I'm going to go ahead and kind of push this in. I'm using Alt to subtract, to push in. And so I really want to create this sort of open mouth here. So I'll continue to kind of push that in. And then I can subdivide again, and I like to use the clay buildup brush. And what this will do is allow us to kind of build up material on top of our mesh here. So I can come in and start to define these shapes a little bit better. Okay, so instead of just these sort of ill-defined, very smooth shapes, we can start to get in here and define kind of the mouth. Okay, come up and over here. If we want to define the lips, we can kind of give those a little bit more thickness. And just work up the actual kind of masses and shapes that you have and that you want to get. So I want it to be kind of this angry little thing here, so make his brows kind of go down. And it's rough, and I think some of that helps. I like the roughness in many cases. It's a little bit more painterly. Let you kind of see the forms you're building up out here, down here under the I mean, he's a worm, but I'm going to say he's got a cheekbone here. So we can kind of bring that down. Okay, now if you're working with Dynamesh, you could remesh at this point and it would kind of smooth this out for you, but otherwise you can just kind of smooth it out. Another brush that I like to use is Damien's standard brush. Dame standard right here. And this will allow you to draw in sort of creases. So I can come in where I've defined these areas and start to kind of define them a little bit more in terms of how the creasing looks. So under the eye, we can start to define different areas under here. Coming up and in under the eye. Same thing here, then coming down along the side of the mouth. Kind of start to define some of those sort of wrinkles there. Same thing along the base of the tail, so anywhere we've got it sort of bent, we want to create those kind of wrinkles coming up. Same thing here. Coming in along the back, we can start to create a little bit of that, and along the back of the head, where this is kind of creased or bent, we can create that. We can also create kind of an underbody type of a look, so we can come down here and create a sort of division between the top of the body and the bottom, coming across here. Okay, you can see where we start to get this artifacting. That's where we need to have more resolution. So you can subdivide again if you're not getting the right amount of resolution. So we could come in here and create that really quickly. Just thinking about the way that we want the wrinkles to kind of flow. Now if you're coming up with lines that aren't really smooth enough, under stroke there is a lazy mouse option here. We'll turn up the lazy radius, and what this will do is allow us to kind of smooth out the stroke as we create it. Okay, so assuming we start up here, see that red line is kind of a trail behind, and it's allowing us to kind of smooth out this stroke as we go, so it's not all jagged. Okay, you also have the ability to use different modes to kind of lock down what you want to do. You can use backtrack. So let's go ahead and jump in here. And if we change this to line, then if we want to define a line that we want to sculpt along, let's say across here, we can create the line, and then as we go back, that stroke is going to be constrained to that particular line. So you can just go back and forth on that particular track. Okay. You also can activate curve mode, where you can create curves and then create the sculpt based on that particular curve. So that's another way to do it as well. But the strokes are going to be really powerful in letting you get the results that you want. We can come in here and start to create detail on the lips. Okay, kind of smooth that out. If you want to define areas a little bit better, you can use polish. So for instance, on the lips, we want to define that lip area a little bit more. We can kind of polish it to create the thickness of it. Maybe we don't want to do that at the bottom. And then we can go back in and create the kind of the lines there. I'll take our lazy radius down a little bit. But we can start to come in and make our little details here. Now we can also use different strokes to create detail. So the drag rectangle stroke we could use with our alpha 58, and we could start using that to create wrinkles. So if I drag this out, you can see right now it's adding it, but if we hit Z sub and take the intensity down, I can actually create sort of wrinkles in here, assuming that we've got the right resolution to be able to hold that, and you can create some interesting wrinkles coming in here. So your strokes will help you do that as well. So it's just kind of a back and forth. I would pick some areas to work on, and then when you get bored with that, work to another area and tweak that. We can use this brush to define some of this, and then go back to clay buildup and start to build up the detail across the nose. Again, smoothing that out if you want to, and create those details here. Now, if you're using Dynamesh, you could even come in and start to create curves along these areas, insert tubes along those areas, and then remesh it, and that'll give you kind of an opening for your eye. Otherwise, you can just come in here and kind of sculpt around this eye to make your sort of eye socket, kind of smoothing that back down. And if you get to a certain level where you are not getting the resolution that you want, you can always subdivide that. Okay, so spend some time looking at some of the brushes. I would experiment with the clay buildup, with Damien's standard brush, with the standard brush, with the move brush, and also polish. And try some of the different strokes. So try the drag rectangle with some alphas, or try to use the lazy mouse if you're sculpting a curved shape. So I'm going to go ahead and tweak this sculpt up a little bit more. And so in the next lesson, we'll take a look at adding surface noise to models in ZBrush, and how that all works and how we can bake it into the model itself. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that next.